Greetings, positive trenders. I hope everyone is having a blessed weekend, and hope you had a great week too. So, just want to make this companion video for the newsletter for this week, and I'm really excited about this newsletter, and I hope you are too. And I just want to thank everybody for subscribing. It's going great, and I'm really excited about seeing how this week unfolds with a lot of great ideas and perspective on the market, which you'll get from the newsletter. So, we get right off. We start talking about the Netflix, how is our trade of the week, and had a real nice push from the prior week off of the mid Keltner channel, which is all pointing upward, and give us a nice boost to the top of the Keltner channel. I mean, hit our targets right basically in the first day, so that ended up working really well. And then from there, we start to talk a little bit more about earnings, because earnings season is upon us, and a bunch of the fangers already reported this week. We take a look at Facebook. Like, remember how it came back down and it touched did the mean reversion on the weekly Keltner channel, and then look what it did. It worked its way all the way back up. These trades through earnings are the ones that you want freebies on, and that's what I talk a little bit about that, and how we can actually get freebies into earnings, and what that means. I also go on to talk about a little bit with earnings. So, for instance, like Netflix and Amazon, how they we're starting to see sort of a change in trend with how companies are handling earnings, and so or what the results are of earnings. Let me find a clean chart here for you real quick. So on earnings, let me just go back here, so you can see and I've got some clearer charts obviously in the newsletter, but with earnings, whether they're good or bad, we're seeing a lot of, especially if they're good or positive, we're seeing a lot of chop into earnings. We get a little bit of a push, but look, they end up pretty much being the same. This really hurts option traders who are trying to go long or short into earnings. That's why if you have freebies, you're okay there. But I'm noticing this as a more often than not these days, especially with the big name stocks. It's really interesting. I see it with Netflix. We saw it with Facebook. Well, Facebook actually. Well, I want to talk about Facebook separately. We saw it with Boeing. Lots of things like this, and I think it's showing like a macro trend, possibly in the economy, but that's more speculative than anything right now. We still continue to trade and trade well. So that being the case, there are opportunities to capitalize on these choppy movements into earnings, such as iron condors, where you sell premium. And I have a link in there to an old video where I talk about the iron condors. And honestly, I don't recommend it, because although they can be high probability trades, so they have a low risk or a high risk, low reward. You can be right many times, but once you finally get caught in one, it could wipe out all the earnings of the prior one. So it's really not a recommended. It's definitely certainly a trading methodology that I don't recommend, but I did want to talk about it a little bit. Other really neat stuff too is I got a little bit more into the in the 15-minute orbs, and I'll have you guys read about that. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is, let's just take a look at Tesla. Is that the 15 orbs? Most folks who have seen a lot of my tweets about orbs, is we look to trade in the direction of the gap, but there's now that you're part of the newsletter and part of this group, there's other techniques that we can use to also take advantage of the 15-minute orbs as well. So if we take a look here, we look at inside bars, and we also look at breaks. But here you can see with Tesla, right, right after earnings, we had this 15-minute orb here, which eventually broke to the downside, and and gave a really nice move. But we could also look at the price action that comes after the 15-minute orb, and how it triggers more movement in the direction that we're expecting, or a potential reversal. So what we do is we look at the ATRs, like the average true range of the 15-minute orb bar relative to prior bars, and if it's not that big, we can look to trade the direction of the gap or look for a reversal. But here, for instance, this was actually earnings day right here. We look at the 30 orb on day 2, and I talk about that a little bit more. But here, gave a really big bar. See how that's bigger than the average ranges of most bars? I mean, it's significantly bigger, and I don't like big wicks either. I know this is a hammer, and we could have traded this to the upside for a few points, but I want to show you this. The next bar kind of told everything, right? It gave you a shooting star right here, and then it pushed to the downside. And more importantly, when you have these big bars and you draw these ranges around the 15-minute orbs, say like here and here, right? We look for the price action within there. It's just like trading the 60 anchors at the open. You look for the price action within these contained ranges. And so once you can find something interesting, right, here was a bullish engulfing bar, but it never broke to the upside. Then you had your inside bar, right? And you could have traded that to the short side, a break to the downside, or this continuation shooting star. And that would have given a much nicer move from 252 all the way down to 248. So a 4-point move there. And then if you held this bear flag up back to the 15-minute orb where it was rejected once, right, twice, right? Boom to the downside. It just kept on going. So there's techniques like that, and I show a couple other examples of using that. So for instance, trading Amazon and so forth, and then I show a 30-minute orbit, how that's traded on Boeing. So very, very, very interesting stuff. We go on, we move on, and we talk about Pinterest. So Pins was one of the most recent IPOs that has actually been somewhat successful, and I think maybe it's because it had to do with its price point. So it's a kind of a tech stock, and it is very popular. So starting out around $20 was a good strategy of them especially after they noticed lift opening up really high and then just plummeting. But this gave a nice some nice moves up, especially here after the inside day, which broke to the upside. So I'm going to continue to keep an eye on this for more opportunities with that. And then we go on, of course, we take a look at the SPX. So on the SPX, we like to start just with all the macros, and or the macro charts. So let me go down to the quarter. Here we go. So we've talked about this inside quarter now as a really big inside quarter, but it is one nonetheless. And so what we're seeing now is a Marubozu quarter, right? And then we'll see, of course, a Marubozu month after that, because at the beginning of the quarter corresponded with the beginning of the month. Now, in May, we'll see a new bar, but so far very strong off of this inside month to the upside. And then, on the month, we have the Marubozu month, but look, it came off of this bullish hammer, which also came up inside month, right? Spinning top, continuation, hammer bar, and then then boom to the upside. Now we're really, really close to those all-time highs. We also look at the previous doji week that we saw, that spinning top doji week, and it ended up being kind of a measured move week. So the week was really strong, which has ended up being at the end of the week. And then we noticed the daily, we've been talking about this channel on the daily here, and we've pushed up. Now it's very possible that with these all-time highs, and then we might even overshoot the channel before possibly making a slight correction to the downside. It does look like there is potential to fill, to continue to go up to 3,000, maybe even 3,010, which is pretty wild. But we'll see, right? So we'll see how it handles this channel top here. So we get into that. We talk a little bit more about SPX and kind of the price action that's going on. We take a look at the clouds. We go through the Keltner channels, just showing that the trend is pointing up, and then we look at the some other interesting things too on the SPX, which I think you'll quite enjoy. From there, we went on and we talk about Elliott Wave a little bit. So let me show you this. So Elliott Wave, I had a couple different wave counts that were available. For the most part, with this bullish behavior, right? We had this channel here which represented wave 3. So we had 1, 2, 3, break out of the channel, new trend, 4, right? And I was looking at maybe an ABC type pattern here, but the count doesn't really make sense with how steep this is becoming. So this really starting to look like an impulsive wave, and a zigzag up, it doesn't make any sense, right? So because if this was 4, we'd be working on 5. So now I see a 1, 2, 3, and then 3 can go as long as it wants to, but it is possible we'll see a correction. If we did see a correction, I wouldn't expect to get much under the this level here, this like 2870, if we did pull back. However, if we did get that far, then the count would change, because we would fill this gap, and then that would kind of invalidate. So we'll see how this actually goes. My suspicion is that we go up higher, pull back, and then maybe one more push up before we see kind of a really big turnover. But it's hard to say at this point. We'll just have to keep counting and see where that goes. So combining all these strategies really helps us give a good view of the market, and in using our levels and trading intraday gives us kind of a good feel for the price action, right? Because we knew that the last few weeks were choppy, and now we're starting to see a little bit bigger ranges, which is really great. So, for the most part, things are looking bullish, I guess, with the all-time highs there. But I still am cautiously optimistic, moving to the upside, and am open-minded for a potential downside move. So just keep that in mind. Then from there we go on and we look at the VIX. So the VIX has been pretty interesting. Let me go and it perked up a few. Last week we talked about getting to the mid Bollinger Band, which it certainly did, because we had this here, and then we came all the way up mid Bollinger Band, came out, pulled back. Then we had almost a spike to the upper Bollinger Band right here, and we're starting to see a squeeze, forming with the TTM squeeze here with the Bollinger Band inside the Keltner channel. So we'll see. We're right under the mid Bollinger Band. We'll see how this kind of wraps up. If it gets calm and kind of works its way down, kind of slowly throughout the week, we should see more pushes to the highs. But we'll see what the VIX has in store, right? Because it can get going at any moment. I also found some interesting anomalies, some interesting things, similarities between March, some of our down days back in March, on the SPX, so I'm seeing some similarities on. So keep that in mind too when you're reading through the newsletter. So there's some Bollinger Band activity that's looking pretty interesting that could potentially lead to at least one big day down this week. Maybe before going back up, but we shall see on that. So. From there, we go on, as always, we go to talk about the Qs. We go to talk about the NASDAQ futures. NASDAQ on Friday had a excuse me. That's NQ Mobile. NASDAQ on Friday had another green day, but it was after a red day, right? So right off of the upper Bollinger Band. So we're still kind of in this overbought territory, but this hammer is very, very bullish. And we look at the weekly too, we're seeing it's holding this volumetric support now. It used to be resistance. So that's showing some bullish behavior in the in the NASDAQ. So then we go and we compare, we go through the Keltner channels and compare, charts of the FANG stocks, all the FANGers. Let me see what we got there. There we go. And so we just kind of compare the Qs. Obviously, we're over the upper Keltner channel. Everything is pointing up. And then we go to look for anomalies to see if there's anything that's maybe pulled back that we could trade that's maybe a little bit off the trend of the Q. So Facebook still really bullish. Although it does look a little overextended. Apple's still bullish. We have earnings this week on Apple, which should affect the market. Amazon bullish. They had their earnings this week. Netflix, we traded. It's still working its way up. Now we look at Nvidia. So Nvidia's got an upward trend, and it did pull back to the mid Keltner level. So this is only going to be on our long radar watch list this week too. It's not the trade of the week, but it does look interesting for a potential move to the upside if it wants. It's got a gap above it too on the daily. Google. Good, and then that's basically what we're seeing right now. Tesla is still in this downtrend, but it is at it's actually below some key support levels, so it's looking pretty rough. But they might have some tricks up their sleeve for next week. So that was Nvidia on the Fangers, is looking interesting, very interesting to the long side. So, but it did just pivot at a key level, so it rejected some gap resistance, so it may come back down. We'll see. So then finally we take a look at the Dow. So the YM, there's the Dow futures. So let's just take a quick look here and see what it is up to. Still an uptrend here in the Keltner channel. But let me go to there's the weekly, right? So this is a little bit different than the other indexes. You can see we had a red spinning top week, and that has a lot to do with some of the reports that we had this week. We had Boeing, Triple M had a really nasty report, and that definitely affected the Dow. It did give us an inside day on Friday, so we'll see how that ends up carrying out through Monday and early next week. So we take a look at some other Dow stocks. We go through the watch list and just talk about some setups that are happening there. And then finally, we get to the trade of the week. So you guys ready for it? It is TGT, Target. And this one got Amazoned on Friday. So Amazon came out and they said, you're probably looking up here being like, okay, well, it's sort of an inside day. Well, it was an inside day until boom, it opened up down here at 77 and then came down, tested the cloud, and then came back up, giving you a doji day. So I'm expecting a little bit of consolidation, maybe day one, for a day or two. But look at that, it's got the 200 moving average here. Once it gets above that at 78, it's gonna, I do think it's gonna make a push to start filling this gap, and I think it can do it before earnings, which is May 22nd. So I put a couple swing ideas in there using options, and then I go through a couple other ideas. So we already looked at Nvidia, and I want to show you another really awesome one that I'm liking a lot, and it is Caterpillar. So nice pullback, right? Bounce off the cloud, over the 50-day moving average. And do you guys know what setup this is? Do you guys know? Okay, so you have your real body right here, big red bar, right? Real body right here, which is under a gap, well, essentially gap down, so real body underneath um, this real body, right? Then the next day, day 3, it pushed all the way up past the midpoint of day 1. This is a morning star reversal right off of a cloud. And then earnings were just a couple days ago, and they were pretty good. So, technically, fundamentally, it's okay. And technically, it is looking really good. This also looks really set up to go. It looks set up to fill the gap here at 141. I know it's not that far away, but that still could be a decent trade for us as a swing trade during the week. So this is looking really bullish. I'm hoping it doesn't just gap and go and get away from us, but really, really nice setup on that one. And then finally, I found Intuit. This looked really interesting too. This kind of gapped down a bunch, like 10 points, and it was on there. Intuit, it makes like tax software. So they're saying that they gave some tax season guidance, which wasn't good. But this has been an awesome uptrend for a very long time. And once again, they pushed it down right into the cloud and held it really well. And what I really like is the volume that came into it. So see how the volumes look great. Look at that. It was like almost double the average volume right there. And it held up green with a hammer and closed at the highs. So this might get some nice follow through as well and fill the gap. So so kind of looking at that too as a potential swing trade. Options are a little bit thin, when you go a little bit further out. But if you can get something nice like around the 0.70, like maybe even we'd try these like 0.62s around $7. You can make pretty decent money on that if it ends up getting a nice follow through, fill the gap, and all that stuff. So that should be pretty good too. I'm looking at that, and then of course I'll tweet anything that I look at. There's a couple to the short side that I'm looking at as well. So I'm looking at IQ. Looks weak on the Keller channel, but it's also breaking out of the daily cloud to the downside on some volume. So we'll keep an eye on that. It did push the other day. So if you caught this on Friday, you'd have caught a nice move from 22 down to 20, and on IQ that's good. But we'll see if that continues to the downside too. And then finally, very similar chart pattern is CVX. So CVX, a lot of oil stocks got a big boost recently because of the waivers on Iranian oil. But CVX, it's under its 200-day moving average now. It's breaking down through the cloud, and it had bad earnings, so it's possible we'll get some follow through there. We'll look at potentially a 30 orb entry on it, or just maybe buying a snapback on it if it's possible. So just a couple ideas to the long and short side, and I think they're really set up to move. And I'm very excited about it. And thank you guys, everybody, for subscribing. And I hope you enjoyed the newsletter this week. And I will see you this week, and I'm going to enjoy trading with you. And I just hope everything just really goes great for you this week. So I will talk to you soon on the free YouTube live stream this weekend, and all, of course, all throughout the week. As we post ideas in the private Twitter, and then on the public Twitter too. So have a great rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you soon.